What is up, my Degens? We got a new intro song, and that is
Love it.
no other. Yeah, man, I'm excited for that intro song. We're gonna mess around with that a little bit. That's Willie Knows Ball, man. So Willie Knows Ball. If you don't know Willie, I don't know what to tell you, but he had that famous beef and the best ball beef of summer of 25. And if you guys weren't in the space for that, go look into that. Go follow Willie and then look into the beef of summer 25, where he made some of the best rap battle beefs, and there was no response, but I saw it was just it was a pretty fun summer for me. Well, let's get to it, man. Chris, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing great, man. This is fun. We got Mitch in the house. We're going to talk some busts and just got out of baseball practice, but I am ready to roll and talk some ball here.
We got Mr. Mitch Anderson at lineup Mitch. Mitchy, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Dude, not much. I'm pumped to be here. I will say I love being positive this time of year and everything's ahead of us with the football season, but sometimes you got to talk busts. You got to talk about the guys that aren't going to be so fun this year.
That's it, man. And when we're talking about busts, we're going to get into it a little bit. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. was on the thumbnail, somebody that, everyone valued so highly. And I'm not saying that Brian Thomas Jr. is a fade in Dynasty. I'm not telling you to just drop my man and get rid of him off your teams. That's not how it works. But ultimately, what we're talking about today is these guys that are valued high. We're talking about guys all top 50 ADP in Dynasty that might not meet your expectations, that might not even match what they did last year. The idea of it is there's changes. Brian Thomas Jr. had Mac Jones as his quarterback. Liam Cohen wasn't there. Travis Hunter wasn't there. There's so many little aspects of a bust. So many things that can go right, so many things that can go wrong in Dynasty. And let's kick it off, baby. Let's go. I'm gonna shift this over to the side a little bit, and we are talking first guy on the docket is Tetairoa McMillan. So this is my guy. This is a guy that I think you're looking at from 2025, 70 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Everybody is in on this guy in Dynasty. Everyone's telling me, what are you going to do with McMillan? Are you buying him? Are you selling him? What do you want to do with him? I think he's a hold in Dynasty, generally speaking, but I think that there's a lot of things that match up, and it's not his skill set for me. It's not McMillan himself that is the problem. Obviously, I am high on McMillan. I think that he's got all the skill sets needed to be a top 12 Dynasty wide receiver, but it's a Bryce Young problem for me. Bryce Young, I think, has that Tua trajectory in the sense that I don't think he's going to get a second contract with Carolina. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be in a great position to get a replacement either. So they're either going to be stuck with Bryce Young or they're going to be in a transitional period, much like the Jets are. And he's kind of got that Garrett Wilson smell to him in the sense that, this guy can be a very good wide receiver, but never be in a really good situation. And we're looking at the charts. We're looking at everything. Everything kind of hits for him. And there's just like Garrett Wilson, there's nothing that's going to say, all right, this guy's going to bust for me. But ultimately, the Carolina situation does not look good. They're 25th in passing last year. I don't see them getting anywhere higher than that this year. I don't think Bryce Young's making any moves to actually extend or get better in that offense. He can't see over the line. He can't see the field. He has issues with his accuracy. He has issues processing game film in real time. He can't see it. I don't see him just being like, all right, all of a sudden I'm going to figure it out. We saw him play. We know what he looks like. And they're going to move him to the slot. So McMillan's going to have to essentially, I know that he had slot usage in college, but he's going to have to learn an entirely new situation in an offense that is going to be shifting, changing. And I think that, when you're looking at a team that abandoned the run last year, they might want to look to run a little more this year. They might want to look for Brooks and Hubbard and whoever else is going to kind of piece that backfield together, because essentially what they did last year was they took away the run. Teams knew they couldn't run. They had to throw. Bryce Young was forced to force feed it, and it didn't work out well for him. I don't think they can keep that going. I just see that McMillan had over 1,000 yards last year. You're kind of drafting him in the spot where you think he's going to exceed that production. I don't see him jumping that production. I don't see him even matching that production. I think like if we're lucky, we're going to see 900 yards this year, probably less touchdowns, and I just think the offense is going to be stagnant, and that's why he's kind of lined up for a bust for me. He's going at pick 30, wide receiver 9. Let's kick it over to the next guy, and that's going to be your guy, Chris, and we're going with the Burden.
Real quick, Mike, fix your mic. The last 30 seconds or so were a little rough.
I think I am. Am I good?
A little better.
Still,
I don't know what happened.
Oh man! All right,
there we go.
We're going live right now.
Now you're back.
I haven't done anything. Maybe we're lagging a little bit, but all right, Chris, we're on to Luther Burden with you, brother. Tell me what you are fading about Luther Burden.
Oh, so Luther Burden, I know this is going to be a little spicy for some, but I am just looking at the Chicago offense, and what we've got here is Caleb Williams, who didn't throw for 4,000 yards last year. Now, will he this year? Maybe. Okay. Maybe he gets his completion percentage up this season. But even if you take all of DJ Moore's numbers and add them to Luther Burden's last year, which would just not happen, really. I mean, that's not realistic for all of the targets and all of the catches and all of the yards and all of the touchdowns for DJ Moore to go on to Luther Burden's stats. You're still looking at just under 100 catches, 1,300 yards, and about 11 or 12 touchdowns. Now, that is just basically what people are almost paying for Luther Burden right now. The price has just gotten too high for me. If he was going in like the 6th or 7th round, that's where I would see him as a sweet spot, like right around where Rome is going. But Colson Loveland is the guy to own in Chicago right now, because in my mind, I see all three of them being able to put up 900 to 950 yards, 6 touchdowns, and that's where I'm comfortable on a prediction with Luther Burden. The problem with him is his price. I don't think he sucks. You can look at all these different metrics that you want, because certain metrics say he's great, other metrics don't, where, I could nail down, well, he only had 3 good games in the regular season, and then he finally kind of showed something in the playoffs. That's not what I'm really getting at. I'm getting at what can he actually do on the field this year that's going to be realistic. So unless Rome severely injures his foot to the point where he can't play this year, or Loveland goes down, I don't see the production for Burden rising up to the level that justifies this price tag right now, which he's going right now, at least on Dynasty Data Lab, he's going at the 501, which is 1 pick ahead of Harold Fannin, 1 pick behind Quinshon Judkins, behind Dak Prescott, ahead of Saquon Barkley. At receiver, there's A.J. Brown, Rashee Rice, Jordan Tyson. I guess what I'm getting at, you could go all the way down to Zay Flowers. I would rather have Zay Flowers. I'd tap that button before Luther Burden right now. And there's a couple of others as well. It's just, I don't love the price. If the price hadn't risen so high, I wouldn't be this much out on him. It's just, this is just such a rise for me that I don't think he can actually produce that. Could he do it in year 3 or 4? Possibly, but I'm not paying for the ceiling right now. That's just way too much for me. And I mean, I like the Chicago offense. You'll see in my stacks video, if you watched it this morning, I like the Chicago offense as one where you could stack up any of those 3. I think that they have the chance to move into like an elite stack tier, where if you've got Caleb, you could go with any of those 3 guys. And I like it. I just don't like the price tag on Burden. Loveland, I'm okay with him going around the 3rd round, but that's because of the positional advantage. When you're talking Burden and Rome is going a round or 2 later, that just doesn't make any sense to me right now. I would definitely take Rome 2 rounds later and just make the bet that they're going to produce similar numbers. So I get it. The Ben Johnson offense, likes a slot guy. We want to all push this guy up to where Amon-Ra was, but Luther Burden and Amon-Ra St. Brown aren't the same. And so that's where I'm out on Luther Burden for this year.
You know, Luther Burden.
I know you got something back.
You know, Luther Burden is my guy, dude. And I think
I'm with you on this.
This is dating back to 3-4 years ago, honestly.
I drafted plenty of them last year. I'll tell you that. His price tag last year in rookie drafts was phenomenal. I love it.
I mean, I think that, the idea of what Luther Burden can be is that PPR, out of the slot, essentially that guy that has that high usage. And I'm not going to call him Amon-Ra St. Brown by any means, but I still think that, the targets and the usage haven't really matched his ceiling, where in the sense that his usage, whenever he got it, even like in the minimal usage that we look at this chart right here. And if you're just joining us, we're essentially using all these charts. And if you're not familiar, we are using, excuse me, I'm like, I can't, my mic is losing it right now. I don't know what's going on.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Mike.
All right. So we're using charts from Dynatize right now. So Dynatize obviously changing the game. If you guys aren't familiar with them, definitely go over there. You can take all these charts and plug them for yourself. But yeah, I mean, all the numbers matching up for Luther Burden. I think that Mitchie and I aren't going to match up and line up with you for this one. But let's go to your guy, Mitch, and we're talking T. Higgins. So here, all right,
I got my always open shirt on, my guy Jamar Chase. I want to say before I get into this, I love T. Higgins. I think he's unbelievably talented. I think he is going to be awesome on the Bengals this season. The ADP every year we play this game with T. Higgins. Right now I'm seeing an ADP of wide receiver 14 according to Fantasy Pros consensus, which do you guys know the best finish of T. Higgins' career?
I'm going to say wide receiver 9.
9 or 10. Yeah, we had one top 10 year, I think.
No, it was wide receiver 15. And even then, he didn't pay off on his ADP. And in fact, he hasn't paid off on his ADP since his rookie season. And so I think a lot of people are expecting a ton from this Bengals offense this year. I am too. But with T. Higgins, either he's missing time every year, there's a lack of volume issue because of the fact that he plays alongside Jamar Chase, or it's the health of Burrow and we don't see him out for the majority of the season. So I just question, like, at a wide receiver 14 price tag, do I really want to take this bet on T. Higgins? The one argument I'll give you is you look back in 2024 and Joe Burrow goes for 43 touchdowns, 4,900 yards, and T. Higgins was wide receiver 6 in points per game. That being said, he still finishes the wide receiver 17 because he couldn't stay on the field. I just think there's a lot of guys in this range that I'd rather take the swing on than a wide receiver 2 in this offense that hasn't proven he's worth this price. And I feel like we're far enough now in T. Higgins' career and in this whole Bengals offensive experiment where we're paying all these guys $100 million a year, that I just don't have a great feeling about him versus a lot of the guys in this range.
Yeah, I think that T. Higgins for me, and I'm sorry for everybody that just tuning in. I think that the mic is locked in. I think that we're good to go right now. It's definitely been giving me some trouble.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that. I think T. Higgins has never matched his ADP. Like all through his entire existence, the idea is that T. Higgins is going to be somewhat of an alpha, and it's never going to happen with Jamar Chase. And I think that, it's finally time for us to dip T. Higgins down below in that next tier. And I think that he's been overdrafted his entire time.
And just to say, I don't think he's not a wide receiver 2 for fantasy football. I just don't think he should be such a high-end wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I think people bake in the price of a Jamar Chase injury happening, and then you get that rise for 4 or 5 weeks, right? Because they know that he can smash during that time period. But, I mean, he wasn't able to do what George Pickens did last season, right? And we all look at the Bengals and Cowboys offenses pretty similarly. But, Pickens, while he was able to smash while CD was playing still, Higgins, on the other hand, hasn't really been able to pull that off.
Yeah, it feels like it's possible for him to pay off. It just feels like there's so many ifs that need to happen that I'd just rather take a lot of these other guys.
Yeah, and I mean, T. Higgins isn't even a kid anymore. I think that this has gone on for so long. as almost like Devonta Smith when you're like looking at him, like, oh, he's finally getting free of AJ Brown, and he's already 28 almost, he's going to be turning 29. At this point, I think T. Higgins in that same boat where, I think that he's in this range and he's going to go downward as far as skill set goes while he's still in this situation. Let's kick it over. I'm going to drop one of my guys right here, and that's Cam Skattebo. So Cam Skattebo is going pick 64, RB 18 on the board in Dynasty. And I mean, I think that was a value at one point in time, but I'm seeing him do backflips, and I just don't trust Cam at this point when we're looking at a dynasty pick in the range of like a Quinshon Judkins range. I think that there are the guys that I feel a little safer as far as, the trajectory goes. And the fact that even taking away the injury, he just doesn't have explosiveness to his game. He doesn't have that explosive play. If you look at all the statistics, everything that you look at, he has no explosive plays whatsoever, and he relies on volume. So if you take that volume away, if the injury is going to be lingering, if any issues are attached to that, we saw what Tyrone Tracy did when he went out. Essentially, he was the RB1, and he was successful. I think that they saw that. They know that they don't necessarily need to force feed Skattebo at this point, and I think that everyone that visions him as a workhorse are going to be disappointed. I think they're going to work Tyrone Tracy in a lot. I mean, everybody – if we saw it, I think that the team realizes they can kind of mix and match. He doesn't have to be a workhorse to be successful on this team. So you're looking at Tyrone Tracy, who got 4.4 yards per carry, over 1,000 all-purpose yards last year. I mean, I think that he's going to be a bigger issue in the side of Cam Skattebo owners than people are giving him credit for. Not to mention the Matt Nagy hire. I mean, Matt Nagy to me is probably the worst thing for this offense that you could ask for. And I don't know if there's any Giants fans out there, but if you have watched him do the play calling, I know that Harbaugh's over there, but really Nagy's going to have control of that offense for at least the first half.
With the other guys in that room, how did Matt Nagy get the offensive coordinator spot? Like, they got Greg Roman and who's the other guy? I can't think of it, but it's like Nagy's the worst of these three.
That's the thing, and he's going to have full control over that offense, at least initially. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be a good start for Cam Skattebo for me. And I can't get on board with RB 18. I think he's probably closer to like RB 25, 30 to me, as far as ADP goes. You guys with me or against me on that?
No, I'm totally with you.
Go ahead, Mitch, on how you feel.
Sorry. Yeah. We've just talked about it. I feel like ad nauseum on our show of like Cam Skattebo, lower yards per carry than Tyrone Tracy last year. We're not saying Tyrone Tracy is going to be the RB1, but like you said, I think he's going to be a greater thorn in the side than people think. And we also talk a lot about with Cam Skattebo, so much of his production last year came from that, I want to say it was a Monday Night Football game against the Eagles, 3 touchdowns, 100 yards. You're doing it against a division rival, defending Super Bowl champs. And, you got that whole like aura side to him, and he's funny on social media. I think when you actually dig into the numbers, he's not a guy I'm super excited about at cost. I don't think he's going to give you the production you need.
Yeah, for me, I loved Ocho Cinco before he was Ocho Cinco. When he was just Chad Johnson, I loved Chad Johnson. I owned him on every team I could possibly own him. The problem with Skattebo is he's already become Ocho Cinco. And so, like, what are we doing here? Doing backflips off of that kind of surgery? The guy just doesn't have his head on right. And I know that his mom came out and said that he had asthma when he was a kid, but I think he did a lot more than that when he was a kid. Because, this is just not a guy I want to bet on in Dynasty long term, right? Like, I could easily take Saquon Barkley around the same range, and Saquon could outlast Skattebo in this league. That's just the way he plays, is so physical. And for him to get the points to continue a 16-point per game pace that he had prior to his injury, I mean, I give him all the credit in the world. He came from nowhere. He was a walk-on at Arizona State. So like, I mean, it's a great story. Don't get me wrong, but at this point, it's just gotten too ridiculous for me. There's other players around him that I could draft that I just feel way safer drafting.
Yeah, and I think it was a 3-game sample size again. Essentially, Cam Skattebo, what did he get injured week 4, week 5? I think it was early. It was very early in the season, right? If I'm not mistaken. Either way, people are vaulting him to be in that range of like a back end RB1 off of a pretty small sample size, and especially since all the reports had the Giants drafting Jeremiah Love if he was there at that pick. They all were in on the fact that if Jeremiah Love was there, they were going to take him. So I think that everything combined has Cam Skattebo as, almost, I'm not going to say he's not going to do anything this year, but I think that you got to temper your expectations a little bit.
Floor is lava.
Floor is lava, baby. Chris, let's go to your guy.
All right, this one's going to be a little spicy for some too. Ooh. I got Quinshon Judkins. No,
we're going Bhayshul Tuten.
Oh, we're going to Bhayshul Tuten. Oh man,
this one's
baby. I mean,
you kind of jumped the gun a little bit there.
I let the cat out of the bag, but we'll
you guys know who he's shopping next.
All right, we'll go over Tuten again. So I talked about Tuten as a sell last week, and again, it's not that I hate the talent. The talent is there, right? But when you look at the numbers and you bring the Chris Rodriguez signing into consideration, Chris Rodriguez was a top 10 back on goal line runs last year. There's a role for him. They didn't just bring him in. They paid him money, a decent contract, right? They're not going to just bring him in to sit on the sideline and help coach Tuten up or anything like that. He's not going to be an extension of Liam Cohen as a coach on the sideline there. They're going to give him the ball. And as far as the receiving upside, you've got LaQuinn Allen there. Plus, Tuten wasn't that great of a receiver there. There wasn't much of a Jacksonville receiving game for the running backs. Their wide receivers are so good that there was little left of the pie from Trevor Lawrence to get the dump downs to Tuten. So, yes, I think he could be great in the screen game, similar to what Bucky Irving was 2 years ago in Tampa, but I just don't buy into it actually being there. And so if you're looking at aspirations of Tuten becoming this like back end RB1, I just don't see it there because A, he could get vultured on the goal line, and B, he could get vultured on his receptions, either by LaQuinn Allen or just a lack of dump offs to the running backs. And so because of that, at his cost right now, which is in the 7th round in startups, pick 82, RB 24. I just feel a little more comfortable if I want to get running back production. I play running back year to year, and I'm fine taking Josh Jacobs or my boy Derrick Henry. I know what those guys are going to do. I know that they are getting the ball all game long, right? And I'll take that 1-year bet over Tuten, who, yes, he could be better, but maybe not. And what if I don't want running back? I'm fine settling for, Jamison Williams, Jalen Waddle. They're both going in that same range. Christian Watson. I love the upside at receiver in that area where Tuten is going. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. But I just don't. If Tuten, if I felt that true upside of Chase Brown was there, which is what everybody compares him to because of the draft capital, right? And a good offense. It's a good offense. The offensive environment is there. So I understand the hype around him. It's just, this is one where, if you draft a hero running back team and then you wait for Tuten as your second running back, you could be pretty disappointed in it. And sorry to say it, but that's where I feel about Tuten.
Yeah.
What do you feel, Mitchie? How do you feel about Tuten this year?
This one's risky. I'm on the Tuten hype train, but we just talked about this in our running back rankings. I made the case for why it doesn't work, and I see we have it on screen right now. Like, he had 3.7 yards a carry last year. He doesn't get involved in the receiving work all that much. You've got a looming Chris Rodriguez that, like you said, was very efficient last year. Like, I think the Liam Cohen explosive offense, I think the coach speak we're getting out of training camp and that we got out of OTAs, all of that gets me excited for Tuten, and I want to believe. But I think that you do need to check your own biases here and be like, there's a lot of things telling us this might not work. And so I see your point of view, even if I'm still on the hype train right now and I still like him at cost.
Yeah, he was my most owned running back at one point last year in Dynasty. Wow. I got so much of him in the second round. But I've been able to dump 3 of those shares, and I'm more than happy to right now. Just seeing where the cost is, I'll take that first and first plus. I wasn't able to get a first plus, but I'm just saying I can use it elsewhere for something that I feel more stable as production goes.
For sure.
I think that he still has, where he's being taken in dynasty drafts, he might not necessarily fit the bust category for me. I think that the bust category for me has to include a high price tag, has to include a good amount of value that I'm spending on this player, for instance, like the guys that we've been talking about are like Brian Thomas Jr. For example, this guy was almost borderline first rounder last year. People were taking him above CeeDee Lamb. Obviously that kind of worked out in a sense, but not now, obviously, when CeeDee Lamb got injured, but I mean, he was going in that Malik Neighbors range, and now you can get him for the 7th, 8th round startup pick at this point. I think that Bhayshul Tuten, it's like, he's like, if he hits kind of for me, I do agree that he's never going to be a full workhorse in the NFL. I don't think he has the skill set to be a 30 carry guy. He's not going to be that guy. He's going to have to rely on efficiency and you just pointed out 3.7 yards per carry. I don't know if he has that in his game, So I'm on the fence. I don't have a strong take on Tuten. I think he's somebody I would take if he's like late enough in a draft, but if he's rising, I'm not going to reach for him at the same time.
Yeah. One final thing
I'm reaching for.
What's that?
I'm just saying, not a guy I'm reaching for.
Like one final thing I noticed when I was looking over some analytics with him, his calling card coming out was like explosiveness, right? In any running back with over 100 carries last year, he had the least amount of explosive plays. That jumped out at me. Like I couldn't believe that, but I guess, the 3.7 yards per carry, that also plays into it. And I know that Jacksonville is kind of betting on him, but we'll see. I could be wrong.
All right, let's move it on to the next guy right here. So if you're just joining us, we're using Dynatize charts right now. I'm seeing a lot of green for this next one. This is Mitchie's guy, so I'm excited to see how he breaks this down. If you guys aren't using Dynatize, definitely go on over there. So Dynatize.com. You're going to see all the charts. There's so much graphing. You can plug your leads in there. You can really just mess around with it a little bit. So if you're just checking this out for the first time, go in there, make an account, and have some fun with it. And let's have fun with this one, Mitch. You got Jonathan Taylor as a bust in 2026.
On our show, we like to call this pull out the pitchforks pick, because that's what everyone's going to be doing when they hear this take. But I think if you hear me out, you'll understand where I'm coming from. And my main thread through all 3 of these guys I'm going to talk about is that I'm going to be a broken record. I think they're extremely talented. I think they're great NFL players. I just don't think they're going to deliver on the cost for you. And I'll start by saying, in general, I'm not that high on the Colts offense. I don't think they're going to be nearly as efficient as last year, but there's so many concerns with Taylor specifically. Since 2015, players who logged 300 or more carries the previous year hit on their ADP 29% of the time, and on average finished 13 position ranks lower than that ADP. In this case, as the RB4, that would leave Taylor as the RB17, and he logs 323 carries back in 2025. Also had the highest rushing touchdown rate per touch in the NFL at 5.57, which I think it has a chance to regress. I feel weird saying that because we all did the same thing with James Cook last year, but that just goes back to the fact that I had so much more confidence in a Bills offense than I do in a Colts offense this year. And I think the most recent example we have of a running back who had a difficult time maintaining efficiency after getting such a large workload was Saquon Barkley. And, you know, he had 400 plus carries dating all the way back through the Super Bowl. And then last year, obviously, if you drafted him as the RB2, you were extremely disappointed. And if you want an even better historical example, look back to Jonathan Taylor a few years ago in 2021, led the league in carries with over 300, also led the league in touchdowns with 20. And then he goes into the 2022 season with quarterback concerns and ambiguity in the offense, but we still draft him as a first rounder. A lot of leagues drafting him as the RB1 overall. And he finishes outside of the top 30 running backs, didn't get back inside of it until 2024, and then didn't beat his ADP again until last season in 2025. It just feels like history repeating itself. And I know there's all this green, and I know there's all these things telling us he was so incredible last year, but he also broke down a little bit down the stretch, and people forget about that. I just think if he was going at like the 1-2 turn, I'd be a little bit more in, but I can't spend a mid first round pick on a guy with this many red flags.
You know what? Honestly, we've been flying through these guys right here. We can take some time with this, man. I definitely want to talk about this a little bit because historically speaking, I think you're right. You know, I think that if you're going to look at history, you're going to look at these guys that have the most carries in the NFL. It's just really the wear and tear, you know, the ability to keep that year in, year out. And you're right. You can look at the most recent example of Saquon Barkley. And obviously we saw last year what happened to him. It wasn't that he wasn't good by any means. It was just, you lose a little bit, and these little injuries, these things happen. The dude ran for almost 1,600 yards last year, and people aren't really talking about that enough. And they're still drafting him in that range. We know what happens when these guys go over 1,500 yards, when they really have wear and tear. And I mean, Jonathan Taylor is what, almost 28 years old, 27 and a half. I mean, this is the same range, the same, situation of Barkley 2 years ago, having that historic season and then really just like gassing it this year. I do expect him to dip a little bit in production. I do expect him, and you're not even talking about the fact that Dimes might not be healthy. We're seeing that he's practicing, but like, is that offense going to be efficient? Is he going to be able to run? Is he going to be mobile? A lot of his skills and a lot of his talent comes from being able to flush out of the pocket and keep the ball alive. Essentially, he does work well on the move. He does work well scrambling a little bit. I think that he keeps plays from dying out. And I think that Jonathan Taylor needs that sometimes, especially in the receiving game. Chris, you have any takes on this? I mean, we're talking Jonathan Taylor, disappointing for 2026, kind of spicy. I like this. I like the spice, baby.
Yeah, it's definitely spicy. I can say that I just adjusted Cook and Taylor this last month. I moved Cook ahead of Taylor, basically for one of those first points you made, Mitch, in that I trust the Bills offense more than the Colts offense. And, whether it's you're talking Daniel Jones and his health concerns, there's the fact of the wear and tear. I mean, James Cook had a lot of carries himself last year as well. So if you're using that argument for Taylor, then you can have to use it against Cook as well. But the fact is, I do think that Cook has a better chance of scoring more touchdowns simply because I don't trust that Colts offense this season. I mean, with all the film that people break down and everything, I think that there's a way that they are able to box it up against Jonathan Taylor just a little bit more to bring his, what did he average? 4.9 per carry last year. I mean, I don't know that he could keep that up. That's a little steep that's tough to keep up. And when he's entering his 28-year-old season, I think Jonathan Taylor, dynasty wise, I think that he could outlast James Cook, right? Taylor is big enough. He's got a good build. He could play till he's 30, 31, 32 even possibly. So I'm not going to tank his value, but I agree. Sure. Redraft wise, Mitch, he's not somebody that I want to bet on with my first pick to carry me to a championship this season.
I appreciate you boys taking the ride with me. I never know how it's going to go when you give the Jonathan Taylor bust pick.
I will always ride the coattails of a bust when they have a monster year. And I think that that's really how it goes at running back. I think that there's always an expected down year. And I think that a lot of people want to just like disagree with that. I think that multiple running backs in the last 20 years have done it, but like historically speaking, it just happens, man. And it's the natural way of life. If you are extending your body to that point, and then you're looking at a team that has a lot of, worry to it. It does have a lot of issues. They don't have their first round pick. Obviously, they just traded that for Sauce Gardner this year. I think that there's a lot of weight on Daniel Jones' health. And really, if you're looking at a team that doesn't start with him healthy, who are they starting? Anthony Richardson, Riley Leonard. I think that is going to be awful for everybody involved, anybody, the pass catchers, the running back. It's going to be tough. And I don't know if you want to start the year that way. And then obviously they have to transition to getting Jones back. And then really, who knows? I think that last year was a surprise that Daniel Jones did what he did. Can he repeat that? Yeah. Like the fact that he died on the Giants. So essentially he was released at that point. And then went to Minnesota, and then, he was kind of a Band-Aid over there. And it was like, who's going to win the battle, Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones? And it was pretty close until Anthony Richardson took whatever that, I think he took like a band to the eye or something like that. And then, so at that point, he pretty much just like gifted the starting job. I don't know. I don't know if he is the real deal. I don't know if Daniel Jones is all of a sudden revived. I don't have enough evidence to point to the fact that he might turn back to a pumpkin. I mean, it's very possible. So
yeah.
All right, man. I mean, I've been talking a little bit. Let's go. You already released this guy, Chris, so we might as well talk about him at this point. Let's talk Quinshon Judkins, man. So why are you down on Judkins for the 26th season?
All right, Quinshon for the 2026 season. For me, it's really simple. It's the Browns offense. Okay, I love Todd Monken coming in to help them sling it around a little, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson somehow finds it again. I don't know, but I'm just not betting on that getting you to 10 plus touchdowns and helping you hit on, in Dynasty, he's going right at the same point that Luther Burden's going. And I kind of see Quinshon Judkins in a similar vein as Breece Hall. It's not that I hate the talent. I loved Quinshon Judkins coming out of school. I had him one spot ahead of Travion Henderson, but those two have definitely flipped on me now. You've got Henderson in a nice, beautiful offense in New England. Who knows when he actually does take over that backfield. And Quinshon, on the other hand, does have the entire backfield, but the dude is in trouble. His average per carry under 4. Is he going to, how many touchdowns would you project the Cleveland Browns to have even as a whole offense for the season? Are they going to get to 20? Right? It's just hard to really see this as a pick of somebody that could rise in value. And I just see it as something that people may start to realize, look, he's either got to get out of there or we're not going to get it here. I've avoided Breece Hall in all leagues that I can for the same reason. And it's just bad offenses do not produce league winners. You need guys to run hot on touchdowns down the stretch for you to win it, right? Yeah. Are you just going to make a bet on a guy for volume so he can get you 20 carries for 65 yards and maybe fall into the end zone because you're lucky because of a turnover that the defense created? Like, this offense, they're waiting for their quarterback next season. If this was next season and they had a rookie quarterback coming in, whoever it is, right, then there's a maybe a little more optimism I'd have here. But that may not come true until Quinshon's 4th season because you need the rookie to have a practice year, right? So what are we doing here, grabbing him at the end of the 4th round when I just don't see him improving his value at all?
This is crazy disrespect for Pro Bowler Shedeur Sanders, I want to start by saying. But I think the Breece Hall, Quinshon Judkins comparison is brilliant. I've had the exact same thought. And the thing I keep thinking about with the two of them is, okay, these offenses just went out. Both of them, for argument's sake, both spent day one draft capital on two separate pass catchers. I know Cleveland didn't technically, but like the question here is like, could this offense take a step? And the two things these guys are missing that would allow them to become elite running backs here in fantasy would be that touchdown equity. And so if you're taking a bet on either of these teams taking a step forward offensively, like Quinshon Judkins or Breece Hall could absolutely crush their ADP. But if they don't get that increase and that tick up in touchdowns, it is very hard to project out him performing and outperforming this ADP. I do like Judkins a lot this year. I think I have a Nick Chubb comparison stuck in my head. He just reminds me circumstantially of him so much. But like you look at the underlying metrics, and again, I don't blame you at all for having the red flags on this guy and on this offense, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is what it is. There is that range of guys where I'd much prefer. I think that you're right on TreVeyon Henderson. If he's there next to Judkins, I might be moved to do that, just because of the efficiency that we see with TreVeyon Henderson. We see that he can do a lot with a little, much like a Jahmyr Gibbs. They said that same skill set, that explosiveness. He doesn't have that. But you can also point at Nick Chubb. And he's a perfect example of doing a lot with a little, doing a lot on the same exact team. Nick Chubb was a Dynasty RB1 for years on an awful Browns team, and he didn't even catch passes. At least we're talking about somebody that can catch passes. I mean, Judkins has that skill set. He definitely, if we're looking at this chart right here, you're looking at it from the perspective, he had a 72.2% catch rate. He's looking at 88.3% target share. I think that he has that skill set. He has that ability. So like in the sense, if this offense is moving, it's just, can this offense move? And who is the starting quarterback? Because it is a good offense as a whole. I don't know if I've ever said this on a pod before, but I'm kind of low-key excited for the Browns offense if they have a quarterback. And I said this on a post today where it's like Casey Conception, Harold Fannin, Denzel Boston, like that is a core that any quarterback in the NFL would love to have. If you popped an average quarterback in that situation, I think that it would flourish, because
I agree. Absolutely.
If you have Judkins and Sampson in the backfield, you have those three pass catchers, and then you have, Jerry Jeudy and the bums, like kind of like, in the outside doing whatever. It's just a good offense. It's got so many weapons. And really they just have to have, like, if Watson comes in and he's just like an average quarterback, if he's just a game manager, all they need is a game manager for this offense to cook, but there's a lot of like ifs for him to kind of stay on this. Like, you're right. The Breece Hall comps are loud, and with them being so loud, it's tough to say, all right, I want to still take a guy in a bad situation. Cause I was a big Breece Hall guy. And I was like, I don't care. He's going to shine through. Cause it was always talent over situation for me. I don't know if I'm playing that way anymore. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can just take a guy in a bad offense, in a bad situation, and just say, I'm good with it. When he is going in the range of, a Mecca Ibuka or, even a Zay Flowers later, or somebody that is going to ideally jump up in value. These are picks that we're talking about. They're going to dip in value. I think they're going lower next year than they are going right now.
Just look at the other running backs going ahead of and right behind Quinshon. You've got Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker, TreVeyon Henderson ahead of him. You got the Bengals offense, the Chiefs offense, and the Patriots offense. Then behind him, you've got Saquon on the Eagles, Kyren Williams on the Rams, and I don't think I've ever backed Kyren Williams before on a pod. And then Javonte Williams. And I know he's your guy, Nerdboi, but just look at it. I mean, he's on the
Dynasty, though. In Dynasty, offense. I'm not. I love Javonte, but I'm not. I think I'm still going Judkins. I think that even if it is
the point is that you could trade back and get Javonte plus. That's
you can probably get more.
And I would think
more production at that point.
Javonte is going to produce more this season. I mean, whatever the Vegas lines are on both of them, I guarantee Javonte's numbers are higher for Vegas. At least whatever the touchdown over under is, that's for sure. Yardage wise, it could be close. I would say it's probably 900, 950-ish would be the over under for those two. But yeah, give me the Cowboys offense over the Browns right now. I know there's a lot of excitement. There's plenty of talent there in the receiving room for the Browns, but they're not quite there yet in the quarterback room. I mean, you dump Sam Darnold on that team, and yeah, I'll be more in on Quinshon Judkins, but we'll see who they get next year. And maybe next year, Quinshon is a buy.
All right. Well, let's keep it moving, man. I'm going to talk about my guy right here. It's Chris Olave.
Ooh.
So, these are guys that I think can disappoint in 26. And I'm not saying they're guys that can disappoint in Dynasty in general, but there are reasons. When we look at it, we're talking about new OCs. We're talking about new competition. And it's really kind of mirroring that Brian Thomas Jr. situation. Obviously, Tyler Shuck is Tyler Shuck. We didn't get a giant sample size of him. We know that he produced, and it was – obviously electric, and there's a lot to be excited about this offense, but you're also looking at, adding Nussmeier, who is essentially a brand new offensive coordinator, somebody that was a quarterback coach and has never been a full offensive coordinator before. And then, I love the fact that he got 156 targets last year. I don't know how in the world he's going to have 156 targets this year. Like, he got 156 targets, got 100 receptions, and had 1,100 yards. He needed 100 receptions to get 1,100 yards last year. I mean, that's not going to happen. You're looking at an offense that he was sharing targets with Juwan Johnson. Even if Jordan Tyson comes in and he is a 500, 600-yard receiver his rookie year, that's still taking away a big chunk of the offense that Olave needed to get 1,100 yards last year. The target share that he needed to get to this yardage is incredible when you're looking at it from a perspective of a guy that has had, 4 concussions and has a blood clot, and everyone's valuing him way up here when they're not kind of looking at the fact that he has a lot of scaries to him. A blood clot is not a small deal to me. It's not like a thing that just goes away all of a sudden. I think they can fix it, obviously, but if you get blood clots, you get blood clots. It's not like, if it happens, it happens. I think that it's going to happen randomly at times, but if you consistently get blood clots, I've seen guys just stop playing. You know what I mean? If it becomes an issue, it becomes an issue. Chris Olave has kind of developed into a wide receiver that goes down when he catches the ball. He's kind of a Tyler Lockett at this point, because you're telling me 100 receptions for 1,100 yards. I mean, there's a good amount of yak there, but not really, dude. I want to say that he's probably not going to mirror the yardage there. He would need a good amount of receptions, and you would have to say that Jordan Tyson's going to be a bust for that to happen. So new OC, obviously a situation where we have new competition, and really, there are issues with his health. There are situations where we didn't see him play fully healthy until last year. I mean, I can't say that Olave is a safe guy in this range. He's pick 42, wide receiver 14. Am I insane for saying this, guys? Am I saying that he's not going to get close to his production last year?
I've been on record. I've called Chris Olave expensive Wan'Dale Robinson. It's 2 guys that were 1,000-yard receivers last year, and now they're on a team that just brought in a new wide receiver with top 10 NFL draft capital, and people are worried about targets being taken away from them. And then you look at, I think both of them are pretty volume dependent. We would agree last season. Like you said, Chris Olave being drafted as the wide receiver 14 and Wan'Dale Robinson, the wide receiver 45. I think both of those guys should be a little bit closer to the middle of that range. I think Wan'Dale Robinson should probably be closer to the mid-30s, and I think Chris Olave should probably be closer to like the mid-20s. I think you're right, 100%. I think he's well overvalued right now.
Yeah, I think he's overvalued too. I mean, there's a reason I've passed on him. All the drafts I've done this offseason, I haven't drafted Chris Olave. I like a lot of the talent around him in that range. And yeah, I mean, the upside, how do you see him getting surpassing that yardage total this year? I mean, I've said Jordan Tyson could be the 1A receiver by the end of this season, and there's a reason for it. I think he's more talented overall. Like if you're on the defense, he's scarier than Chris Olave as far as explosiveness, as far as just playmaking all around. I mean, you referred to him as younger Tyler Lockett, basically. That's really what he's become. And so, again, where is the upside? Like, yeah, he finished wide receiver 6 in some leagues last year with those totals, but that was more because he somehow stayed healthy all the season. I'm not betting on that again, that he's staying healthy. He's one hit away. We got to remember that. I mean, he's like Tua. Tua somehow has stayed healthy the last couple of seasons, but, one hit. These guys, they might not play again.
Yeah, well, even taking away the injury concerns and everything attached to Chris Olave, it's a weighted system. You're looking at a guy coming off of a career year, essentially, and everyone's saying that it's Tyler Shuck that really helped him out to get to that point. And yes, he's finally got a quarterback that can get him the ball. I agree that's definitely a bump to him, but you're drafting him at his complete ceiling right now. Yeah. And I think you haven't really seen what he can be with somebody else in this offense. He has never in his career really had somebody else, he's never shared the field with somebody else that is talented. I know that he obviously in college did that, but I think that when you're transferring to the NFL, he demanded a shit ton of targets. I don't think he's going to match these targets. So these have got to be more efficient than he's been in his entire career on targets. He's got to essentially change the way he plays. And I think that that's hard when you have this idea in your head that you can't have another concussion, that you have to be careful with how you play. I think that he has to have that in his mind, that it's like, at this point, you have 4 concussions, you're 26 years old, and that's only the ones that are on record right now. I think that the yak ability is limited because he still has these concerns about, hey, if I take another massive hit, what's that going to do for my career? I'm not going to say that that's probably, these guys are gamers. These guys are in it. They're not necessarily thinking about that in the moment, but there are people in his corner that are probably saying, hey, man, don't go crazy out there, please. I mean, you can only say that to so many people before they're going to actually kind of think about it in the secondary motion, the way that they kind of move, the way that they go about it. You saw Tyler Lockett, the way he laid down. He caught it and just laid down. And he would literally, it was a joke. He would catch it and just sit, And I think that when we're looking at the yak ability, Chris Olave, it's not, ADOT is 11.8, yards per reception, 11.6. He's pretty much catching it and going out of bounds at that point. So if he gets less receptions, and he got 9 receiving touchdowns last year, I just think that production is going to be hard to mirror this year. And that's what you're drafting him as, because you are taking him in that range of guys that are going to ideally get those numbers year in and year out.
Yeah, I mean, 75 or 80 catches for 900 to 1,000 is a way more realistic projection for Olave, which still isn't bad. It's just the fact that you're taking that in the 4th round when it's really more like a 6th or 7th round player, right? Like Jalen Waddle. That Waddle and Olave have always been kind of bunched together. Now all of a sudden we're paying 2 rounds higher, 2 or 3 rounds higher for Olave. I just don't buy it.
Yeah, honestly, if I'm going to go for a guy that, has these re-injury concerns, but also is looking at a bump in dynasty value, I'm going to go Waddle, honestly. I love the Waddle pick 3 rounds later with Bo Nix and the fact that he's going to be that first target. I don't really know how this split. I like Jordan Tyson a lot. If Jordan Tyson is fully healthy, I don't really know who the alpha is. I'll be honest. I don't even know if you have a fully healthy and operable Jordan Tyson next to Olave. I think that hurts Olave a lot more than a Pickens to a CeeDee Lamb, for instance. I just think that it's going to be really hard with these guys to fully coexist at a high level. But we got one more to hit, and it's your guy, Mitchie. And it's Garrett Wilson.
I feel like a broken record here, but one last guy I think is extremely talented. I think that's partly been my philosophy, is trying to find guys who are extremely talented, and so people are propping them up in drafts when the situation is just not going to allow them to pay off. ADP right now of wide receiver 16. He's in a putrid Jets offense. They have Geno Smith at quarterback. We all saw the disaster that was the Las Vegas Raiders last year with Geno. They go and spend first-round draft capital on 2 new pass catchers, Omar Cooper Jr., Kenyon Sadiq. Even before that, I already wasn't all that excited about Garrett Wilson. But now you bring those guys in, and it kind of goes back to that conversation of Garrett Wilson having to dominate the target share to be able to create real value in New York. And now you bring in 2 guys that, I think that's going to have consequences for that target share. And if I'm being honest, I might be more out on him in Dynasty as the wide receiver 13, just because of the introduction of these guys. And because long-term, we just talked about this with Cleveland. And I love what you said about Quinshon Judkins maybe not having a quarterback until year 4. It's like, when's New York going to get a quarterback for Garrett Wilson, if ever? And let's say they do, and they take a year and this guy develops, and then what? Garrett Wilson's 29. Whatever value you had in Garrett Wilson is gone, and you never really got genuine high-end wide receiver 1 production out of him. But coming down to this year, I look at the range of guys around him. We've got Emeka Ibuka. We've got Ladd McConkey, who I've made my bold case as having a chance to be the overall wide receiver 1. And then even, I know you mentioned him as a bust, I'd probably take T-Mac over Garrett Wilson just because I think the upside is there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I almost comped T-Mac's situation to Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the reality. You can re-roll Garrett Wilson into another Garrett Wilson. Guys that hover at 1,000, guys that hover around 1,000 yards, but don't ever necessarily make that leap into wide receiver 1 territory. They're just on the cusp, the T Higgins and these guys that are on the cusp of a wide receiver 1, but they never get there,
Yeah.
It is tough systematically to get there. And I think that I'm with you on this. Garrett Wilson has been so hard to just get off of. He is our generation's Terry McLaurin. He's our generation's DJ Moore. And the fact that these guys didn't have a quarterback until they were 27 years old. I mean, Garrett Wilson is almost at that age, and you're hoping that he at least gets somebody by 27, right? Chris, how do you feel about Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, I'm out. It's pretty simple. Again, the Jets, the Browns, those are teams that I just try to avoid. It's the same thing. I don't know when they're going to actually get a quarterback. Sure, Geno could sling it around for some garbage points, but Garrett Wilson could pop because of that. But again, when you're in the range that Garrett Wilson is going, I guess it's just too high of a price tag. I don't see the upside. Is he going to have a 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 yard type season? That's just not in his bag. That's not going to happen. Yeah, he could get 100 catches, but he's going to be averaging similar to what Chris Olave averaged last year. And, you're not getting any upside by picking him where he's going. And last year we saw an absolute disaster. And to be honest, would any of us be really that surprised if the Jets turn into a disaster this season? Come on, let's make smart choices out there. There's other options in the same area on good offenses. You're helping yourself out by picking players in your first 5 rounds that are on good offenses, because they're more likely to hit at the end of the season when you need big weeks, when you need them to start steamrolling opponents and you get 2 to 3 good games in a row. That's how you win championships. It's not by picking Garrett Wilson because he's the best player on a shitty team, so he's going to get all the volume. I guess I'll take him. Those aren't the kind of bets you want to be making, just volume bet after volume bet after volume bet. That's how you finish in the middle of the pack. right? So that's just kind of how I feel. I'm not in on Garrett Wilson either, right?
And it's also, even if these rookies don't hit immediately, you're talking about an offense that just added Omar Cooper Jr. and Kenyon Sadiq to it. And, even if they do the bare minimum as far as rookies go, that's still, a lot heavier than sharing the field with Adonai Mitchell. Realistically, he has been so used to being the bona fide alpha in an offense that is usually anemic. But if you add 2 other guys that are 10 times better than anybody he's been on the field with, I think that you have to ask the question is he even going to match what he normally does at this point? And what he normally does doesn't match his ADP. So realistically, you're pretty much drafting this guy as, you're still hoping that he jumps like a T Higgins. He is a T Higgins, you're hoping that he makes that leap, but he's already getting to that age where, he's getting stuck and he's going to pretty much live in this little realm of being overdrafted for his entire, I guess like fantasy career at this point. I can't say that. I'm sorry. He's not even 26.
We can't kill him. We can't kill him yet.
26.
Terry McLaurin did finally get a quarterback, right? And
he's 20. He's 26. I'm sorry, Gary.
I'm not leaving him. I'm not leaving him for dead in Dynasty. It's like, I don't think I can't see a universe that this time next year his value is above the wide receiver 13. I just think he's like a guarantee to drop in value.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys in this range. I'm taking Emeka Ibuka. I'm taking Flowers. I'm taking Ladd McConkey. I think that there's all these guys. I mean, you can do a re-roll on these rookies. Yep. I mean, even like make the case Mekhi Lemon might, have the opportunity to jump in this tier and outproduce Garrett Wilson in a 3-year span, just because, I trust that offense more than I trust the Jets. But, I wouldn't necessarily go trade Garrett Wilson for Mekhi Lemon right now. But if you wanted to float it out there like Mekhi Lemon plus for Garrett Wilson, I wouldn't say that it's a bad idea in Dynasty personally. No. But Mitchie, thank you so much for joining us tonight, man. I appreciate
you. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, man. Let's get you plugging everything that you have coming up, everything that you've done, any content that you've dropped, any news that you have. Let the people hear it.
Dude, you can find us all in one place, either YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. We drop all of our shows. We do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Got some amazing guests coming up. We've got Joe Pisapia. He's coming on Monday. Such a fun episode on some of the best draft strategies. We rank them and tier them. Just a ton of really, really cool episodes coming. Some more creative stuff that we're going to get a little experimental this August and try to give people some fantasy content that isn't so cookie cutter if we can.
Hell yeah, man. I love it, dude. Well, like I said, I appreciate you joining us today, man. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and dealing with my technical difficulties. Honestly, I rarely have those. So, no, I get kicked off pods all the time, I'll be honest. But, Chris, what we got going on, man? You just dropped a video today, man. Tell the people what you got cooking.
Yeah, stack it up. I dropped it this morning. I went through, me and my co-host, we went through just about every team until we got to the gross tier of stacks, and we just told you who to avoid there. But basically, we just rolled through and told you first, we gave you some stacking theory, why it's good to stack, how it helps you win championships, and just basically increase your ceiling, right, for your scoring. And so, yeah, check that out. I love stacking. We all know that, right? But there's a reason behind it, and we get into that. And then we'll have Mock Draft Monday 25.0 coming up this Monday. Should be another good time. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do. Maybe we'll head back to redraft. It is getting into redraft season. So, yeah.
Hell yeah, man. You got to go grease that chair up that you're sitting in too, man. It's very squeaky.
No, that's the floor.
Is it the floor?
The dog. Man. The squeaky floor.
I don't know what's more concerning.
The dog, the floor. You're going to just fall through the floor, I think, brother, if it's squeaking like that. But all right, boys, I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate everybody that joined us. Obviously, we do the Dynasty Show live every Thursday. We have the Devi Show every Tuesday. And then we got quick hitter IDPs that are dropping periodically throughout the week. So there's a lot of content. Redraft is coming up. We got Stacy doing the redraft show once the season is started. So, man, the channel's cooking, dude. We got pods every day. There's no rest for the weary, man. So if you're not following us, go over to Dynasty Rewind YouTube. Follow us over there at Nerdboi Takes, at Klemke007_FF, and my man at Lineup Mitch. Go follow us, man. Follow us on X. We appreciate you guys. Hope you have a good night.